So let's just quickly summarize before we move on. If we make a general statement, our general statement is going to be this. When you compare the slopes of parallel lines, this is only for parallel, by the way, okay? If you compare the slopes of parallel lines, they're always going to be the same. They have to have the same slope. If they're different slopes, they're no longer parallel. Even if they're just a little different, they're no longer parallel. Our second observation is the y-intercepts. The y-intercepts cannot be the same. They must be different, okay? They must be different. Think about that for a second. If your slopes and your y-intercepts are the same, then you just have the same exact line, and it's not two different lines. It's the exact same line. So our general point here is that our slopes are going to be the same, but our y-intercepts are definitely going to be different. So hopefully you've gone back and you've done the exact same thing. You've found your equations for each of our red, brown, and green lines, and then you've compared the slopes, you've compared their y-intercepts, and you realize that slopes are all the same, y-intercepts are all different. So let's take that a little bit further and take a look at the last piece here. So the question is, we're going to use what we've just did from the investigation, all right, to say, are these two equations parallel to each other? Yes or no. So in that first one, we have the first equation is y equals 3x plus 7. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that since you can't see it too well. Y equals 3x plus 7 and y equals 3x minus 8. So do these two equations meet our two criteria that we just lined up? Our two criteria are that our y-intercepts must be the same. Our slopes must be the same. So are my slopes the same? Yes. So criteria number 1 is good to go. And are the y-intercepts different from each other? And in this case, they are. So yes, these two lines would be parallel because the slopes are the same and the y-intercepts are different. Let's look at the next one. The next one, my slopes are 2/3 and 3/2. So same numbers, but different fractions. 2/3 versus 3/2. So are those slopes the same? They are definitely not the same. These are not the same at all. 2/3 is very different than 3/2. So if that's the case, I don't even have to think about the y-intercepts because if it doesn't meet the first criteria, then this is a big fat no. These are definitely not parallel. Okay? So what I want you to do with your partner is I want you to think about how you could create or just name 3 lines that are parallel to this one right here. I'll give you one, and then you and your partner come up with 2 more. So if I wanted some lines that are parallel, all that has to happen is my slope has to be the same. So the slope of this one is positive 2, which means this has to be 2, so 2x. And then my y-intercept has to be different, so 2x plus 1. That's a different equation, but it's the same slope and different y-intercepts. So definitely parallel. So press pause on the video and come up with 2 more with your neighbor. See if you can come up with 2 more and then have someone check them and see if they're right or wrong. All right, so maybe you came up with y equals 2x minus 11. That's parallel as well. Same slope, different y-intercept. What we're going to do now is look at 3 lines that are not parallel. So if they're not parallel, that simply means that my slope has to be different. So maybe negative 5x plus or minus anything, plus 7. That's going to be very different slope, so not parallel. What about this one? This is kind of a trick question. What about y equals 5x minus 2? Does have the same slope, but it's still not actually parallel. The reason why is because hopefully you just recognize that's the same line, right? That right there is actually the same exact equation. So that's technically not parallel either because it's actually the same exact line. Can't be parallel to it if it's actually yourself. Another example of one that would not be parallel might maybe be anything like negative 4x plus 1. Not parallel. Lots of different examples of something that's not parallel. So you've kind of experimented now with how we find 2 lines that are parallel or find two lines that are not parallel, looking for the same slope and different y-intercepts. The last component of what we're trying to learn is to now actually create equations. So we have a little game plan here for you, some steps lined out, and you've got some blanks there on your paper that you're going to fill in. But essentially, let's kind of summarize what we need to do first. What we need to do first is we need to find a new line. It's going to be a new equation. And it needs to be parallel to a line that we're going to be given, and then it has to go through a random point that we're given, x comma y. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. But our steps are very, very important. And so I really want you to take a minute to write these steps down because they are going to really make or break you when it comes to this process. So, step one. Step one is to identify your new slope, the slope of the new line. In this case, because they're parallel, it's actually the slope that's already was there, the same slope as the given equation. So if the slope of the given equation is 4, then the slope of your new line is also going to be 4. So that one's pretty basic. Identify the new slope. It has to be the same. Give you a second, write that one down. Once you've got your new slope, the next thing we need to do is we need to plug in to our blank equals blank times blank, just like we've practiced, blank equals blank times blank. And we're going to plug in our new m, that's our new slope, and we're going to plug in the x and y that we were given. So just for an example, if this x and y we were given was, let's say, -2, 7, then that's exactly what we would plug in right here. We would plug in 7 for the y and -2 for the x, right? So that's the new x and y that you're plugging in. That's the point that you're going to be provided. Okay? Step three. Step three is now going to be to actually just simplify and solve for b. So you would need to solve that blank equals blank times blank plus b for b. Figure out what does that b value equal. We've been practicing that for a couple days now, so I'm hoping you're getting better at it. And then last but not least, your last step is going to be to rewrite the equation. So you now have your new m and you have your new b. You rewrite your equation, and that's going to be the equation of the line that's parallel and going through the point provided. Okay, so press pause on the screen if you need to kind of catch up on your steps and make sure you're good to go. And we'll go from there. We'll try some practice problems here in just a second. So let's take a look. We've been given a point, and what I want you to do right away is that point you've been given, go ahead and label it. That's your x and y. And we've been given an equation, y equals 3x plus 2. Honestly, the only thing we need from that equation, there's really only one thing we need. And the only thing we need from that equation is its slope. So tell your neighbor what the slope of that equation is. Hopefully you can find it, no problem. So hopefully you wrote down your slope is 3 because there's our m value right there. That's our slope that we've been given. So now that's our new slope, really, the slope of our parallel line is the same exact thing. So my slope is 3. Done. That's step 1. Step 2 is to now do our blank equals blank times blank plus b. So blank equals blank times blank plus b. And we need to plug into that. So our new slope that we just found is +3. That's our middle blank. And the xy that we were given is provided right here. So our y value is -4 and our x value is +2. Let's simplify. If we simplify, we're going to be left with -4 equals 3 times 2 is 6 plus b. If we solve for b, we're going to subtract the 6 over, cancels out. So b equals -10. So now that we've got our b value, now that we have our m value, we can rewrite our final equation. Y equals 3x minus 10. There we have the line that is parallel to y equals 3x plus 2, but it goes through the point 2, -4. So I want you to practice the rest of those, check them with your neighbor, and then check them with the key that the teacher has. Good luck.